Thanks everybody for joining us today. You're with Sales Intel and Measured Results Marketing, and we're presenting Ready Your ABM Strategy for Success in 2019. You have with us today myself, I'm Jason Hubbard. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for SalesIntel.io. And we have Christopher Antonopoulos, who's from Measured Results Marketing. He's their CEO and founder. So obviously, we're all here to talk about account-based marketing. A good place to begin with that is, what is account-based marketing? So we have a quote here, a definition from Marketo on it. And account-based marketing, according to Marketo, is an alternative B2B strategy that concentrates sales and marketing resources on a clearly defined set of target accounts within a market and employs personalized campaigns designed to resonate with each account. So what does that mean? In a nutshell, that means instead of doing a broad-based spray and pray approach and seeing what comes out the other end of it, or what's coming in through your inbound channels on your website or people that you meet with at events, instead this is a strategic approach of going and looking at and profiling what are your ideal accounts that you would like to land. And then within that, who are the people that you need to speak to that are the decision makers. And once you've identified those two, it's then going all the way to the next step of identifying what's the key content that people are going to engage with. What is the value proposition that these people are going to be interested in? And that in a nutshell is account-based marketing. So it's taking a very proactive approach to who you're going after, what those roles are, and what your messaging is around that. So why should you care about, why are you all here? Why is account-based marketing such a buzzword? So I'm going to talk, briefly about the stuff here on the slide, which is what are the benefits you get from account-based marketing strategies. But before I get into that, I'm going to take just a minute and talk about some of the trends that are really driving people to have to adopt these account-based strategies, as opposed to the broader-based strategies that have really driven things in the past. And those are what you've seen over the last 5 to 10 years, especially in the business-to-business space, is a democratization of technologies. So in particular, marketing automation and sales enablement technologies, which 5 and definitely 10 years ago was restricted pretty much just to large enterprises and was primarily focused on the business to consumer space. What you've seen over the last decade, and in particular the last 5 years, is those technologies and all the things that they enable have trickled down into smaller companies, earlier stage companies, and have really infiltrated the business to business space. And the result of that has been it's opened up the ability for people to really do things en masse and at scale as far as outreach and communication. And what people generally did with that is they went the wide approach to it. So load in as many people as they can, hit them with generic email messaging or content, and see who comes out the other end of it, who engages with content, who hits the website, who fills out a form. And then those are your people that you hand over to your sales team to go after. What's resulted from that, and the reason why you're seeing account-based marketing have a resurgence and be such a heavy topic and buzzword right now, is those channels, primarily email, that those platforms allowed people to really be able to scale out outreach on, have become really cluttered and really noisy. So it's really difficult to be able to do outreach and get through all of that clutter and actually get engagement around that. At the same time, you've seen the gatekeepers such as Google really break down and get tightened on what they're allowing to get through, in particular their spam filters. And so you're seeing fewer and fewer of those emails land in the inbox and fewer people engage with those. And so those channels that people have been really using the last few years and using with regards to these new technologies that have been at their fingertips are becoming less and less effective. And so what you need is a more strategic approach, and it's the reason why people are adopting account-based marketing tactics. Some of the benefits you get from that, above and beyond being able to work within the confines of the new space and the cluttered channels that have come out of the technologies that we're all using these days, is account-based marketing allows you to align the efforts between sales and marketing. So there's always been a historic divide between sales and marketing. What marketing defines as a marketing qualified lead that gets passed to a salesperson does not always fit the criteria of what's a sales qualified lead. And so what you can oftentimes wind up with is a disjointed effort between those two departments, where the goals and the primary metrics that marketing is focused on don't translate over to the primary metrics that sales is focused on. So for instance, marketing could be looking at, click-through rates or conversion rates off of a landing page or conversion rates off of a form, and not be paying attention to the quality of those leads that are being passed to the sales team and how well they're converting those from a marketing qualified lead to an actual opportunity. And so you can get misalignment between those two departments. Whenever you've agreed upon, prior to outreach, what are your target accounts and target personas at those accounts, then you remove that friction between the two departments, because ahead of time, everybody's agreeing, here's who we're going after. The other piece is you've got an increased return on investment. So, the money that you're putting into these marketing efforts, initiatives, outreach technology platforms, stuff like that, since it's more targeted towards your ideal customers, not only your ideal accounts, but the right people at those accounts, then those efforts are going to be a lot more efficient and are going to convert to close deals at a higher rate. And then the last piece is it focuses the sales reps and it gives them reassurance that the leads that are being passed from marketing to sales are actually legitimate leads that they need to be spending their time and focus on. It also means that they're not having to spend their time going out and doing their own prospecting, because they can rest assured that they're in agreement that the leads being passed and nurtured from marketing are in fact the accounts they want to be focused on and selling to. So in a nutshell, account-based marketing delivers higher returns than any other marketing approach available in the B2B space. With that said, though, if all of this is true, why is account-based marketing relatively new for a lot of people in the business-to-business space? And that is because account-based marketing, frankly, is hard. And so I'm gonna let Christopher talk through what are some of the biggest hurdles that people face as they try and adopt and implement account-based marketing strategies.
Yeah, so I mean, fundamentally, it sounds, when you talk about the benefits and why I do it, it sounds that everyone should be fundamentally running ABM programs, but when you get to the implementation of it, we're finding these are the spaces where people get stuck. In particular, changing sales territories, understanding what markets or verticals that are going after. So really identifying who those target and key accounts are, trying to match the individuals associated with those accounts is sort of the first hurdle. Then it's creating the content and those pieces in order to run the campaigns is that next piece. And then what channels do you use? Are you using your website, email, social channels, some other digital means to get in front of people? And so, how can you separate your ABM message to the right person and not really have it caught with all of the other distractions that someone has in their day? And then the last piece is really, you have individuals that have titles and specific roles and data that you collect that may not necessarily equate to what their job or role is in a buying process or an evaluation process, and how do you sort that out? So Jason and I will talk about, here's some specific things you can do to solve these challenges, but these are the fundamental things we see when people are trying to put a strategy into place, clean up their database or do association of contacts to accounts. They typically get stuck in one of these 5 places.
Great. Thanks, Christopher. And real quick, Christopher, I'm getting a little bit of an echo off of your headset or your audio. So not sure what happened there with that, but if you want to take a look at that. We talked about 5 of the big hurdles that make this difficult and challenging. So from there, we're going to jump into, how do you address those? And so the very first, we're going to start at the high level, which is within an account-based marketing strategy. Of course, the first step is figuring out who you're going to target. And the easiest place to start with that is what accounts, what companies in particular are you wanting to target? And so within that, you're going to want to try and go back and look at your offering, your pitch, your value proposition, and ideally you've got some historical data to look at. Who are the accounts that you closed the easiest, had the shortest sales cycle, had the best return on investment on, and be able to target specifically what it was about those companies and accounts that could be replicable as you're going out and trying to track down similar accounts and companies to try and sell to. So at the account level, typically you're going to be looking at things like firmographic data. And depending on what your offering is and what type of company you are, that can be things like location. Are you only selling into a specific region, into a specific country? Do you have better success in certain physical locations versus others? Is there a certain size company that you have greater success with? So, is a certain stage as a company that your value proposition or what you're selling is particularly applicable to? There's a couple of ways you can get at that. You can look at annual revenue, or you can look at number of employees, and then similarly you can look at are there specific industries or verticals that you're trying to tackle, or your pitch or product is particularly applicable to. And then on the technology side, especially in the B2B space, oftentimes we're selling an actual technology product. And with those technology products, oftentimes that has to fit within their existing technology stack and internal processes. So it may be really, really important to you to be able to look at what type of technographic information is there. And by technographic information, I mean, what are the technologies that they're already employing internally at that company? And what does that tell you as far as your ability to be able to target those? So for instance, if you have a product that integrates with Salesforce and only integrates with Salesforce, then you know that you need to limit who you're pitching to only Salesforce customers. Or if you've got something that plugs into Gmail or Google Apps, then you're going to know you want to isolate that to only those that are going to have platforms that are already going to work with your technology and your integrations. Once you've identified those companies that you're wanting to target, then the next piece is who at those companies are you wanting to target? And so this is where you need to get in and start defining who your buyer personas are at those companies. So who are the decision makers at those companies that you need to talk to, that you need to pitch to in order to get a buying decision? And within that, a lot of people have had historically the attitude of, in that sort of going wide or relying on inbound traffic side of it, hey, I'm only going to sell to those people that I had conversations with at a conference, or who filled out a form on the website, or who replied to an email or clicked on a link that I'm able to track that back to. The problem with that is research will show you that these days in a B2B buying decision, typically that's going to be 5 to 13 people that need to be at the table in order to sign off and ultimately make a buying decision. So even if you're generating, good numbers of people coming in through, your inbound or outbound strategies, the chances are that you've got everybody at the table that you need in order to make a buying decision are pretty slim. And so, account-based marketing as a strategy can be used both to help define who you're going after from start to finish, but also is a really useful tool and strategy for defining the additional people you need to identify and target to supplement those inbound campaigns or event campaigns, lead generation campaigns that you already have in place. So how do you figure out who those additional people are that you need to be having conversations with? And then the really important piece of this is you need to be tailoring your content to target those people, so that your content is speaking directly to their use case, their needs, their pain points. And this is really important to drive engagement and help yourself cut through the clutter of those really busy channels that you're trying to get people's attention and to engage with on. And so after you've identified the companies and the people personas at those companies that you want to get in front of, then the next piece is, how do you actually get in touch with them? And this is where the technology and the data providers in the past have really come up short. And this has been one of the really big challenges to implementing account-based marketing strategy, which is that question of, okay, like I've done all of my homework. I know the companies I want to target. I know the personas. I know all of the firmographic and technographic information that I need to segment off of. But how do I actually get phone numbers and email addresses for these people that I want to target? And that's where, huge leaps have happened in recent history around the quality of the data that you can get. And so in the past, where companies really relied on scraping tools or going out and trying to figure out who was in what position at what company via LinkedIn, and where the data typically was in like that 70% range of accuracy. You didn't really have a whole lot of choice other than to go wide, because whenever you have that high of a hit or miss rate, then it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to spend a ton of time and effort on targeting these people whenever you can assume that basically a third plus of those people reaching out to are not going to be the right people or the right information. And so that's really important to be able to figure out who's going to be your high quality data provider or data resource that you can really trust, because otherwise it's going to be really difficult to get your account-based marketing campaign off the ground, as well as continue to feed it, because you're only as good as the data that you have and the people that you're able to reach out to. So, Christopher, I'll hand it over to you to talk through the last couple.
Yeah, so really, now that we've looked at, how do you have the right data, match contacts to accounts and build those programs, it's looking at, how do you use your marketing automation platform to really engage people across multiple channels. And so what's important is to have that specific cadence of activities. I won't read through the sort of the recommended number of emails, number of calls, but it's really building that out programmatically. So there's an automated email that gets followed up by a task so that you have the right sequence and the right number of touches. I think it's quite easy based on the number of emails, the number of different channels you need to try to reach people on, to lose track of an individual and not really have the right level of engagement to get in front of them. I think the other thing is, we're seeing channels like direct mail being a bit more effective, especially in these target accounts. I think about a campaign that I was part of a few years ago with video conferencing, where it was sending a direct mail piece that had a can of Coke and a bag of pretzels in it that said, this is essentially all you're going to miss from traveling. So you need to use video conferencing, because why do you want to deal with an airplane when you can, all you're missing out on is a cramp seat and a drink and a snack. And so, looking at some alternate channels beyond just email and calling, which are typical to do the promotion. So then we'll talk about the last piece, which is, knowing your audience. This is a comment about title and job roles, and really understanding how do you match the offers and that content against the right person, company, and industry. And that's the challenge with a lot of the automation and a lot of these programs, is that you need to have enough personalization to match person's name and understand pain point. But when you're using an automated system, you have to have enough other information in the database, or for those true key accounts, have some level of personalization so it doesn't look like it's a generic message. I can say that from the context where we've just finished holiday gifts with Harry and David, and so it's interesting. I got an email in terms of offering a discount for buying a certain volume or free shipping. What they failed to notice is that I'm not actually the person in the company doing any of the ordering, and so a lot of their messages and pieces were wasted on me, because they thought because of what my role is at the company, I was actually making the decision on what holiday gifts went out to clients. So it's really focusing on understanding that person, their role, and then identifying those pain points, even if it's generic for an association. having that piece is really the part that we find connects best with individuals. So we'll sort of talk about, I have a chart on the next slide, really talking about, you have, process and you have people, and then the axis at the bottom, you have level of effort. And so, a lot of things can be, we use the word processified. It's not really a word, but it seemed to have stuck. But, looking at identifying the process of delivery or database for personalization, adding tokens, but we're finding that these efforts do require a good bit of human interaction or human effort to make the right decisions and the right personalization, especially when trying to match people, identify what technology you're using, and then be creative against channels. So this chart is meant to show that you can build an automated process, you can build a set of rules, but this does require a bit of human effort to make sure that your matching and personalization are right, so you don't have challenges when you are running a program like this en masse.
Great. So question back to you. So how can measure results marketing help people that are interested in pursuing an account-based or implementing account-based marketing campaign?
I think fundamentally we focus on how do you construct infrastructure, tie those pieces together. So, what our role is to, assess technology, figure out where those gaps are in process, and then, help you construct that program and, not let your technology or tools get in the way of doing the execution of the programs. I think fundamentally that's sort of how we work. And I think for you, Jason, talking a bit more about sort of sales intel and how can you get that right information.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, sales intel came out of the struggles that people have had in trying to implement account-based marketing strategies, and that is the data quality has just not been there in the past, and continues to not be there for most of the existing data providers. And so Sales Intel took a different approach to our data management. Instead of trying to go really wide and build as big of a database as we possibly could, we took the route of being specific and trying to really target. I mean, we took an account-based strategy to our entire product. So we took it even one step further than who you're going after, but we designed the entire product around an account-based strategy. And that's where we started with, the 75,000 companies that made up more than 90% of the IT spend in the US. And so that was our targeted, ABM campaign of who we were going to go after and build a database with. And within that, we've been able to achieve over a 95% accuracy with our data. So the immediate question is, how did we do that when everybody else is stuck around 70%? And that's a couple of things. One, we manage and own our data from start to finish. So we gather the data through our own proprietary apps, run it through our patented algorithm. But even then, our data quality wasn't up to where we wanted it to be and needed it to be, both ourselves internally and to offer to customers who were trying to implement an account-based marketing strategy. And so that's where we then take that machine process data and hand it off to a team of researchers who literally go through and hand verify every record we have in the system. And so that gets us to 95% accuracy, also gets us with direct dial numbers to 90% of the contacts that we have in the system. So that opens up an additional channel that's always been a huge challenge for people trying to implement a account-based marketing strategy, which is, when you have phone numbers, more often than not, those phone numbers are, general lines into the company or dials into a gatekeeper, as opposed to a direct dial to the person that you're trying to get in touch with. And then we supplemented that with all of that technographic and firmographic information that you need on the company level, so that we can actually be a true reliable resource for people that are trying to implement their account-based marketing strategies. Cool. So we've got a few minutes left, not many from our allotted time. But anybody that has any questions for us, let's pop those in the question channel there in Zoom. To start with, Christopher, a question for you. You mentioned whenever, what can measured results do for clients that are looking to implement a strategy. You talked about technology. Obviously, oftentimes, the companies that you're going into, more often than not, are going to have some sort of existing tech stack. So what's your general approach and philosophy to going into those companies, unwinding what they currently have, what's working, what's not? How do you implement that with regards to existing technology versus recommending them move or upgrade to other platforms?
I mean, I think a lot of times companies have the technology they need. It's just a matter of mapping out process and getting the team on board. So, a lot of this turns into more of a process challenge instead of a technology challenge to start. And then, you have to have some initial success within these programs to be able to justify the spend on technology. So it's usually mapping out what that process is and figuring out how to work within the tool a company has. And then, very rarely it's sort of a gap in technology.
Great.
There's a question here in the chat piece. I think, Jason, I'll sort of read it out for you to answer. But, Manpreet, how many people need to plan and implement to start ABM?
That's a good question, and a lot of that's going to be dependent on, as you would imagine, as an answer to this, is going to be dependent on you as a company and what your goals are. So what oftentimes is the best strategy for this is start working backwards. And so, if you have certain revenue targets or a certain number of wins or badges that you're wanting to get under your belt within, the next quarter or the next year, obviously we're coming up on the end of the year, so people are doing, planning for 2019. In particular, if you've got some sort of a track record, you've been tracking stuff in your CRM, you can take those goals that you've set and work backwards from that. So you can say, on average, our account size is, let's say $10,000 an account for, annualized recurring revenue. And we want to hit, $100,000 in revenue for, month one of 2019. So you can work backwards from that. 100,000 means we need to close 10 deals. Our close rate is 10%. So, we need 100 sales qualified leads to come into the system. From there, we need, let's say, 10 times that as marketing qualified leads. So we need 1,000 marketing qualified leads past the sales. And then you can work backwards from there. Like, what is our conversion rate, from, a cold lead to a marketing qualified lead, and how many do we need in the system from there? But typically what you're going to be aiming for, from a sales to marketing, gap is you're going to want to have, basically 10 times the number of people that you're wanting your salespeople talking to that marketing is reaching out to. And that's generally a minimum. So, you're going to have, 10 to 20 or even 30 times as many people per account that you're going to load in from the marketing side as you are from the sales side. And within that regard, part of that is marketing has the opportunity and the ability to go wider through the technology and reach that wider audience. And so marketing can target people that may not actually be those decision makers that are going to hold the purse strings on a deal, but they can oftentimes be influencers or cheerleaders. So that might be, your end user might be a salesperson that's, an SDR or account executive, but they actually don't have any buying authority. But they can definitely be the people that take that to your decision makers and are your advocate on the inside. So that's a long-winded of saying it depends. Cool. I know we're running over, but happy to stay on as long as people have questions. Anybody else have any more questions for myself or Christopher? All right. Well, if not, Christopher, thank you for joining us today. Again, you had Jason from Sales Intel and Christopher from Measured Results Marketing. Want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us today. And like I said, we've recorded the webinar. We'll send out a email with links to the recording of the deck shortly. And I hope everybody has a happy holiday. Christopher, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, again, we're available if you have questions. We know a lot of companies are trying to figure out how to either spin up a program or make an ABM program work that or spin up one from scratch or make improvements to an existing one. So we're happy to be resources for you along the way as you're trying to figure this out. So don't hesitate to reach out to us directly.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.